episode of MC Fireside Chats. We're the only show on the planet where the host cannot figure out how to play the intro correctly. Like, I tried to test this thing. I don't know if it's still starting for you guys. I tested it on my end. It plays flawlessly before the show, but when you hit go live and then press it, it stutters. Does it stutter for you guys still?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I can't figure it out. So anyway, that's just my technical limitations. That's my ceiling, apparently, is figuring out show intros. Welcome, everybody, to our first week episode for MC Fireside Chats, Data Trends Insights show. We've got Phil and Gracia here from the RVDA. We got Scott Barr from Canon Consulting and Simon Neal from Camp Map. Gentlemen, should we introduce ourselves? Everybody knows who you guys are anyway. Nobody knows who I am. But Phil, introduce yourself. Tell them how important you are, in case they don't know.
Hi, I'm Phil and Gracia. I'm president of the RV Dealers Association. We represent U.S. RV dealers, motorhome, and travel trailer dealers across the country.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Phil. Simon, you want to go next? Simon's happy birthday, like a week ago. Happy birthday, Simon. Week and a half ago.
Yeah. Well, it's past now, but thanks. And you too. I'm Simon, the founder and CEO of Camp Map. We help outdoor hospitality businesses improve marketing and guest experience with premium digital sitemaps that integrate with your website, booking, and app.
Thanks for being here, Simon. Last but not least, Scott.
Scott Barr, Canon Consulting Group. We're in market research and analysis, doing a lot of industry work across outdoor hospitality, camping, RVing, and so on. So great to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, we're missing a couple people today. Ralph's flying back from Ojai Connect. We had a special guest who was supposed to be on the show who just stopped answering Char's emails after he committed. So I don't know what happened to him. But anyway, so what do we got, gentlemen? Lots of data, lots of trends. It's April. We're kind of trying to ramp up here toward hopefully what will be a nice, busy summer camping season. Where do you guys want to start? Anything interesting?
Well, we could start with some good news, I guess, that I was kind of surprised to see today in the Wall Street Journal, and that was March consumer sentiment in the U.S. from the Conference Board was unchanged from February, and that was a surprise to a lot of folks. And why do
can it go lower, Phil? Like, I know we're all good news. I don't want to ruin your good news.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it didn't fall off the table.
Worse. Okay, yeah,
it didn't get worse. So.
Which is great considering the fact that we now have a war and higher gas prices and all that. So I agree with you. That's a positive.
All these external things haven't really come home to roost as far as consumer sentiment, taking a dive. And of course, the RV industry, along with a lot of outdoor recreation equipment people, look very closely at consumer sentiment because of everything that's baked into it, right? If people don't feel like that they can make purchases, they don't do it. And then another thing is, in the U.S., I think we continue to look at increased tax returns, tax refunds. They're supposed to be higher this year, and if the future pretends the past, that should help out. A lot of times people will spend that on discretionary purchases, which, of course, RVs, marine, vacations are part of that. So while there's a lot of external factors, I'm not saying that it's all tailwinds. There are a few, since it's spring, flowers poking up through the snow, and we'll see how it goes.
I'm all for finding flowers, Phil. I know I may seem negative sometimes on the show, but like Scott and I have been talking for weeks on Outwired about how Scott is in favor of war, and it's great for gas prices being high. Turns out more people go camping when gas prices are high. So we like COVID, we like war, we like all kinds of positive things are happening, right, Scott?
Just yesterday I did a little webinar for the campground owners in New York, and I kind of introduced the whole webinar with, I'm going to say some things that hopefully aren't going to come off sounding really bad, but sometimes in a down economy, it's good for us.
Yeah.
And I said, but the positive side, and here's my positive spin on it. And there's a really good reason for that, and I do believe it, is because the outdoors is therapeutic. I mean, people love it. It's the escape. They need to reduce stress. What better way to travel than Going somewhere, hop in your RV or your car or whatever, and go there. Don't go through airports.
Yep.
Don't do that.
Well,
That's
especially not right now. Yeah, not right now.
But
I mean,
historically, we see, one thing I looked at a while, like last year, I think was, I looked at historical visits to the national parks, and I did overlays of different major events that happened, whether it was 9/11, recessions, stuff like that, the Iraq War previously. And national park visitation increases as a response to every single one of them. An average of something like 2 million additional guests go to the national parks every year, on average, based on these types of negative events. So it's real. It's a real phenomenon, and it's again one of those things that you just you don't want to say, hey, bad news is good news, but also I do think there's a good positioning for our industry in there to talk to people about the benefits, reducing stress, and so on.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we talked about this, right? Like we've talked about not just the gas prices, but the fact that camping is an affordable alternative. I'm asking AI a question there, by the way. I wasn't ignoring anybody. Uh, and gas prices help us. The ability to want to stay closer to home helps us. Everybody, like you said, I think nobody disputes that the outdoors is a great escape. Obviously, nobody wants to be in airports right now, unless you have clear and pre-check, and then you still, nobody really wants to be in an airport ever, do they? For as little time as possible. So I think these all tend to hopefully offset some of the negativity that we thought might be earlier in the year, right, Scott? Like, are you seeing any data for that, or?
Well, yeah, we are. We do. So we're on net. People are much more likely to camp, and specifically among RVers, they are more likely to take an RV trip when this stuff happens. It's really you honestly, you only have a small percentage of people who don't travel or travel more, whether it's to camp or RV specifically, based on this type of stuff. So it's real. It's a real thing. And I did some research early last week, just with a handful of RVers, asking the question. It wasn't a survey. It was more like an interview about their response to the gas price issue. And of the almost 30 RVers that we interviewed, 4 said that they were going to just RV a little bit less and stay closer to home. The remainder said that they would continue to take their trips. The overwhelming answer was, I'm not going to let an extra $1 a gallon prevent me from taking my RV trips.
I have an interesting question for you, and I know you said this wasn't a survey, so maybe you don't have this data. Maybe you do. Do you have an idea of what type of rig they have?
Oh, in this, it was a mix. It tended to lean into bigger rigs, though. This was more, Class A's, E's, and fifth wheels, in large towables. Many of them would say if you can afford to buy one of these, you can afford to put the fuel in.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you, right? Like, we talk a lot about, maybe on our show Outwired, about this K-shaped economy, right? And how the middle class is disappearing. Does it then stand to reason that the people who have those more expensive rigs would still continue to travel more, as your not survey but brief responses indicate? And I think that we kind of feel as an overall industry. But then over the last few years, as Phil has said on the show multiple times, we've had a divergence from maybe as many of the Class A's being sold, with a divergence toward more of the smaller trailers, which are more affordable. So are those people who are now arguably maybe on the road more than they were a few years ago with more of these units, more impacted by gas prices than the bigger units are?
I would say, and Phil could probably weigh in on this as well, that a lot of those smaller units, they're not as heavy. They don't impact the gas mileage nearly as much as the big ones.
Sure, yeah, it's still some, though. You have to tow them, right? And so I'm not saying that it's the unit that's the issue. I'm saying it's the person and the price sensitivity of that person, given the unit that they were able to purchase.
Correct. And the people, even if they are from a lower income bracket, they're still going to take some trips. They're still going to take road trips. They'll just be shorter. There's, I'm convinced that some people aren't going to let their RVs sit in their yards or in storage this year. I think if they own them, they're going to take them out. Again, maybe not as much, maybe not as far, but they're still going to take them out.
Okay. What do you think, Phil? Anything to add? Clarity?
Well, I mean, I think that the change in motorhome mix has been going on pre-gas price issues.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen
Yes.
type B vans overtake Class A's over the last 5 years. So it gets more down, I think, to how people are using the units. There's certainly that core big motorhome market that is there and remains there.
Mhm.
But with the van life people and just the diversity of use that we're seeing and the different ways people are camping, the dispersed camping, trend we're seeing and glamping and different ways people are camping. There's just more choices out there, and I think we have a kind of a wider base. So certainly, I think the Class A motor market has a core base of users, but the motorhome market has definitely shifted, and I don't know that you can hang it on gas prices.
No, and I'm not trying to. I'm just saying, like, does the ability for you to have enough money to purchase a Class A versus, and some of it is a want, I just want to downsize, right? But there's an argument probably to be made economically that if you're purchasing a smaller unit, you may not have a budget for a bigger unit. In some cases, not all cases, right? So I don't think I'm hanging it on gas prices.
Right.
I'm saying that
Well,
now that you own that unit, does your willingness to spend more on gas prices? That's what I mean.
Right. The affordability
Yeah.
of the unit overall is certainly
Does that
playing-
correlate to your affordability and willingness to continue to pay high
Right.
gas prices? Is what I'm saying.
Yep.
And I have no data that says it does or isn't. I just thought it was an interesting question. Simon, what do you see in Europe? Because I know they don't obviously have these big units over there. Is there any data or information that you have on how gas prices may or may not impact summer travel in Europe?
No direct data, but I think coming back to the war issue, it's not just the gas prices, it's a mixed thing. And for us, particularly being a lot closer, to the issues, if you look at somewhere like Cyprus, which is a huge tourist destination from Europe, I think they have 3 million tourists a year go to Cyprus, majority from Europe, majority from Germany, UK, Poland, all big camping countries. So if they're suddenly not going to Cyprus for a holiday this summer, where are they going to go? So
And for
then
clarity, for the American audience, this is my limited knowledge. This is the country that the UK or France sent the warship to defend, right? Because they were being hit by some drones from Iran.
Yeah, so there's a big UK airbase on Cyprus that's used by the UK and the US as well. So that was an easy, close target and took a small hit. So yeah, tourists will be like, do I want to go there for my holiday and watch out for drones? So obviously not. So there's 3 million people potentially looking for another holiday. And yeah, the alternative is, stay home. Then what's the options for staying home in Europe? Is a different destination or try something new, try camping, try outdoor resort style. So I think there's definitely a push that's going to happen from people who would typically do that type of holiday looking for an alternative. And it's not just Cyprus, it's also Dubai. That's a big destination as well for Europe. So that might overcome the increase in gas prices. It has happened. It's here. People are complaining, but it's daily lives. And again, for the Europeans, it's a big one-time summer holiday. You're going to drive your car 6 to 8 hours to your destination and then back again. So it will impact the trip, but it shouldn't be, disastrous that it's going to push somebody to make a different choice because of the gas price.
So you're on the same side as Scott. Generally speaking, like most of Europe is happy there's a war going on because they get increased tourism.
Yeah, I'm not going to put it like that, but I think that could be, the positive result of it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll always look at positive things, right? We always want people to experience the resorts and try new things. And again, we have so much to offer in the outdoor hospitality industry that I think so many people don't realize. we have to offer. So, what else you guys got that you guys want to talk about? This made me more happy than more. How do we see the summer continuing to go for generally overall? Do we see any early reservation trends? Anything that's looking positive? Or
I mean, from my perspective, I feel a little bit like we're in a bit of a holding pattern.
okay, is that normal though because of the booking window just shortening year over year anyway?
Right. It's been shortening. We're I think we're continuing to see that. People are going to take a wait and see approach. I'm not hearing about people canceling plans though.
I haven't heard that either, but also is that a function of just the booking window is so short there haven't been a bunch of reservations on the books yet?
And that's quite possible, but if they haven't canceled yet, they're still in play. It's like, remember in Dumb and Dumber?
Because you and I have talked about that before, right? People wait and wait and wait and wait, and maybe they're less likely to take the trip, but some for sure still do. So if they're not on the books, and again, we want them, right? So how do we? All right, let's take it from this approach then, and maybe I'm sorry if I cut you off. Finish your sentence if I did. How do we take it from this approach? If somebody has not canceled yet and also is not on the books yet, but maybe is on the fence in the uncertain area of whatever's, pick a reason, right? How do we as a campground owner who are watching this podcast, campground RV park owner, people in the outdoor hospitality space, whatever, how do we encourage them to come? What is the messaging that we send to them?
I think that the messaging is all about how the experience is going to be. It's going to be relaxing. It's going to be a good getaway. You're going to feel better after this. It's escapism. All those things that we talk about all the time. It's like it's the core message of what we should be telling people anyway. But
we don't often, right? In the industry, most of them just RV park near Austin, whatever else, right? There is subtle messaging with photos, but there's not that direct, implicit marketing message that maybe needs to be communicated more.
Absolutely. I feel like it's that people will do it, and you might have to dangle the carrot out there a little bit, and you'll find some promotions without giving it all away to get people to maybe commit a little earlier, to get them to pique their interest, so that if nothing else, you're there at that decision nexus when they're ready, that you're there, you're top of mind. Because again, if they are shortening the booking window, if they are waiting, you want to be top of mind when they're actually prepared. You don't want them to be getting on Airbnb, or something else to make their plans. You want to be that presence in their mind, and you may have to work it a little bit. You may have to work the individuals by multiple messages, multiple layers of messaging.
It's actually a good thought. Like, and I don't talk about my own products here very often, but like we released that booking intelligence product that you've seen, Scott, that tracks all the behavior on the booking engines for people. And one of the things that as you're talking about, right? Like obviously it tracks abandoned carts for all the reservation platforms and things like that. But one of the things as you were talking about, I was thinking of was, you're right. Like if the booking window is shortening, but the research window is maybe expanding or staying the same. So people are looking at the parks, they're browsing, they're looking at prices, they're checking out site types, they're thinking about camping, but they're not booking and pulling the trigger yet. Then that is another reason to like not only touch base on an abandoned cart perspective, but touch base on you're thinking of me now, but maybe in 2 weeks you're researching a different campground or an Airbnb or something else. How do I make sure that I stay top of mind, even if I can't recover your abandoned cart right now, but I know that you were looking at me. And so when you're ready to book, I don't want you to forget about me, whether that's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever. So that's an interesting, maybe thought process that I don't think I'd considered.
I think it's the same for RVs too, Phil. I mean, I'm sure the salespeople have people in the pipeline, but that person who maybe was a definite no today, maybe as things loosen up a little bit as time goes on, they may soften up a bit too.
Right. I'm sure it's very similar to like the empty cart situation. Just because they bounced once doesn't mean they're going to bounce a second or third or fourth or fifth time. You got to, as long as they, don't opt out, you should keep on them, because we know that buying process for an RV can be a year or more. So just because they didn't, or something, a situation may change, everything from a job situation, health issues. We see it all with RVs, and barriers to why they didn't buy. And we have the consumer research that shows that you've got to, until they opt out, you need to keep them in your database, and keep in communication with them, with what they're comfortable, the level they're comfortable at.
Because there's so many different reasons, right, that they may have said no. It might not have just been the large purchase. It could have been anything happening in their life. This is fascinating to me. I have a family member, my girlfriend's cousin, is in real estate. He's a big, huge real estate broker over in BC. And I had asked him, I think we were down at his house maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. And I was talking to him about maybe the downturn in the market and how it was affecting people buying houses. He's like, the downturn in the market never affects real estate, because people buy for different reasons. They may want to upgrade, and they may push off the upgrade, but they might get divorced and need to move into another house, or they might, they might have a family member who needs to move in with them and get into another house. So there's all kinds of reasons people are changing houses, not just to buy, just like they would change the RV that they have for the same reason. So it's interesting to think about that from a different lens, that maybe from a macro level, we can say economy bad, economy good. But from a micro level, as Scott likes to point out, there's all kinds of different reasons that maybe just a small tweak in messaging might change their mind.
Right. The cost issue is always one of the top 2 to 3 barriers, right? Cost.
Yeah.
But others are, change in family situation and health. It's amazing. It comes out all the time that, something happens within the family situation that they step back from the purchase decision because of that. And so again, I think that, it isn't a car where you need to get to work, or it's off lease, or whatever that purchase decision is. You have a big repair bill staring you in your face. It isn't like that with RVs most of the time, so that you've got to have this kind of longer runway for the path to purchase.
How are the dealers responding to this? We talk a lot about the consumers, right? But your RVDA, how are the dealers responding to increasing price pressures on them?
Well, I think that they're working with the manufacturers, and I think, earlier this month we saw Thor and Winnebago's quarterly statements, and to their credit, Thor and Winnebago both said the dealers are being cautious on restocking inventory, and that the manufacturers are going to balance their production with retail demand. So that is, for the long-term health of the RV business, that's good, because you don't want to have them, shoving stuff down the supply chain that isn't going to get sold and then has to be discounted later on, creating, a lot of problems and a lot of margin pressures for both dealers and manufacturers. There's another side of that coin too, saying, well, if they're not producing, what if things get better? There'll be a shortage of RVs.
Yes. Yeah, like we had
Well,
saw quickly during
like we
COVID.
saw during COVID, right?
Yep.
So I understand that, but I do think that I kind of believe that Bob Martin at Thor Industries and Mike Happy at Winnebago, who are long-term leaders of those companies, probably know better than the people who say, well, we should produce and get them on the dealer lots and they'll get sold eventually. So I think dealers are trying to right size their inventory. They're watching their turns, and they're being responsible as far as ordering. And part of it is too, with, interest rates are down a little bit, but they're still not where they were. And the carrying costs of that inventory are another, governor on how much dealers are going to order.
Well, so that's what I was partly like. What you just said was fascinating, and I appreciate you. I wasn't really asking that, but it was good information. I was more asking from a dealer operations side, and I know that the ordering and the supply and the shipments and the retail stocking all play into that. But how are they handling like price pressures as inflation maybe continues to go up, and now we have fuel prices that are going to cause manufacture, like it's going to be a whole loop? Are they discounting for consumers? Are they like, how are they approaching getting the consumer to buy in these times? Is there different sales tactics? Is there different deals? Is there different units they're trying to push? Is there
Well, and it's price is somewhat related to how much inventory they have on hand and how old that inventory is.
okay?
So if inventory ages, they'll discount it to get it off their books. So that's part of it, is making sure you have inventory that is in line with the demand in whatever market you're in. So that's one thing. The other thing is your product mix, as far as, okay, what have I got as far as entry level, mid price, and then more upscale RVs. So you got to balance that off. But I do think that the availability of financing also plays into that. So dealers who are doing price advertising, for instance, $499 a month for this trailer or whatever, they've got to make sure that they can finance those units at those
At
rates.
that rate, okay, yeah.
So that's the other thing, and financing availability is good. There's very few
That's good
people
to hear. Okay.
that if they really want to buy an RV, can't find somebody to finance it, whether it's through the dealership or through their own local banks or credit unions. There's financing available, but the whole thing is consumer sentiment. Are they ready to buy, that kind of thing? So yeah, I mean, the dealers aren't discounting right now. Because they're not overloaded with inventory. Not to say there aren't good deals to be out there right now. There always are, but we're not seeing a big discounting environment out there right now.
Okay. Scott, I'm curious from a campground perspective, and maybe Simon, you can answer this question a little bit too, because I was at the Croatian Camping Conference last year, and we were looking at all the resorts that are on the Croatian coast there, and they're all, not all, but a significant number of them, I think, are more upscale than what the United States has to offer from an RV resort. More so from like it has a restaurant and it has multiple pools and it might have more luxury mobile homes. Is that what we call them? I can't remember. Mobile homes. But they're all kind of it's more of a resort feel than it is like a true resort feel, with everything condensed all in one, at least in the Croatia, and I know southern France has some of that stuff along the coast and things like that. So whoever wants to take this, but maybe both of you in pieces. So that question, does that then exacerbate, does the necessity of somebody or the desire of somebody to stay closer to home and drive less end up causing campgrounds, if this stays this way long term, nobody's going to react in a month or 2 months or even 6, right? Does this cause a situation where it's beneficial then to put something like a restaurant on property, Scott, that maybe wasn't as profitable from a margin perspective, but now might be because more people are willing to eat there?
My take on it is that something of that magnitude would be fairly reactionary.
In the short term, for sure. I'm talking about like if a year or two goes by and we see higher gas prices, remaining higher interest prices, those kinds of things.
Right. If this is sustained and the look ahead calls for more, you probably would want to start considering sometimes of those some types of infrastructure upgrades like that, because for example, right now we are seeing people staying in one place a little bit longer. We're not seeing the longer multi-stop trips as much. Just people are just holding back on that. Again, it goes with the shortened booking window. It goes with staying closer to home. During stress, people like to stay closer to home. So, if they're staying in one place longer, then you want to build the infrastructure to.
The more you give them, the more it's likely it is for them to choose your resort over the other one to stay longer at.
Correct. Especially the one thing that you'll have to do the calculus on is any campground owner would be the trade-off. Like, how much more is someone going to spend there, versus somewhere else, and is that truly going to pull people in? How independent are your guests? Are they cooking in their RV? Are they cooking over the fire, or is that the preference? I mean, when the economy is down, people are quite a bit more likely, and we do have data on this too, by the way, to prepare their own meals in camp, whether they're RVers or tent campers or whomever. So because they know they can save that money, the difference is, a family of four going to McDonald's, it costs like $40-50 now. And for that amount of money, you can go to a grocery store and get quite a few groceries to cook over a fire.
I would really love to see the math on that in 2026. I think you're right, but I would really love to see if the margin has narrowed now that, like, I mean, a pound of beef up here is like $15-16 for organic, like nice beef, right? Farm. So, and I remember when it used to be like $5 in the States when I used to buy it, when I lived down there. And obviously that was 10 years ago, right? But it would be interesting to see how fast those prices have risen, not for organic, but just generally speaking.
Well,
compared to
the issue though is, like with food costs, is that they go up incrementally at the grocery store. They go up exponentially at a restaurant
because of the staffing and all the other costs. Or
Yep. So it thus honestly it becomes more of a bargain to prepare in camp over time. I have some of this math I can share with you, by the way, Brian. I've actually looked into this.
I'm curious. I just want to see it. Like, I'm interested to see if it's narrowed or widened. Like you say, like what you're saying makes logical sense that it would widen, but it would be interesting to see, especially with like minimum wage not going up very fast in the United States. So like, does it skyrocket as much as it? I don't know. Anyway, whatever.
But yeah, it's and one of the things that I do is I do have I did this as kind of vacation cost thing, and food is a huge part of it. So if that guest is willing, to prepare their own food, to do their own thing, they're gonna, that's what they want. They're not going to want to spend more to stay at your place because you have a restaurant.
No, so, but then look at ways. Finish, and then I want to say something. Finish.
So anyway, as a campground owner, you have to make that decision. Who is your guest? If you have a lot of overnight guests, having on-site food is probably a good investment, because that person doesn't want to get out all the food, do all the prep, do all the dishes, all that kind of stuff. Whereas someone who's staying there long term is much more likely to prepare their own meals, at least for a decent amount of time. One of the things we do know from past research, though, is campers in general like to eat out at least a few times during their trips. So if you have that on site, people are going to use it. They will definitely use it, and it does give you an advantage. It gives you something to talk about. So, those are the things. But again, I think if we're looking at a situation where the economy is really, still down, that the guests themselves might be less likely to purchase the prepared food for themselves.
But that's when your creativity comes into play, right? And so this is two things. Let's say you don't want to put the capital into a restaurant because either you don't have the data, or the data is too short, right? 3 months, 6 months, a year, and not 2 years. So you're not ready to make that pivot like we just talked about in the beginning. But maybe there's a service you could offer, like making Uber Eats or DoorDash or Instacart more accessible to your campground, offering a suite of menu items or a staff member who can help you gather this stuff, or making it more convenient for people to cook at the campsite or order from local restaurants nearby. And then the other thing is, like we talked about to a big group about this like a year and a half ago. I don't think they ever acted on it, right? But I have a big hydroponic garden in my living room. Like, what if you just raised your site rates $5 and offered people fresh herbs and lettuce and all that stuff when they check in? Just things that they're going to cook over the campfire anyway, right? That enhance their flavor profile, or save them a trip to the grocery store to buy something, but something that clearly differentiates you in the mind of the guest, especially if they're changing resorts less often and you want to make yourself sticky. So it doesn't always have to be a big restaurant to make yourself sticky, is my point. It could be a little thing that just changes the experience for the guest and makes it easier on them, while also maybe even making you some ancillary revenue. Because if you're not breaking apart the price of the food, and it's $5 more a site, does that make them more likely to stay with you, Scott? Do they pay attention to the $5 versus a separate resort fee or a added expense of going to the restaurant, paying it separately? Or does that change how they perceive the cost? Or
it will change it to a degree, but most people aren't going to get down in the weeds that much on it. They're going to kind of look at their overall, costs. They're going to kind of throw it all together and figure out what they can budget for on their trip. Again, you become much more sensitive as costs of everything increase. So, it does offer you some differentiation. If a campground is going to consider anything, things like food trucks, DoorDash, whatever, those are decent options because you're bringing it in for the guest. You're not making money necessarily from it, but you're offering it as a service. And that may be a first step is to do something like that. You can also do things like on-site preparation, like a barbecue or something like that. You could also do it instructional. And I convinced a guy here locally where I live to do this, where he did an outdoor kind of class/demo on cooking in a Dutch oven or a fire. And he sold out. He had more people interested in it than he could host. So he had stations set up throughout his little park. And so things like that, I think, too, are great ways to bring people in, and that kind of approach too does get that person to think about the connection they make while they're there, how they connect with the park, how they connect with the other people there, and they also learn something along the way. And so I think that to me is kind of those types of things. Do all of them have a benefit? But I think for the campground owner, the ones that don't require a lot of effort and a lot of outlay of revenue are probably going to be a little bit more attractive.
So, Simon, the question I was going to ask you, I think, is maybe better outlaid now. Do you have a sense of the history of a little bit of the European campground, camp resort scene, campsite scene? Like, did it start with everything condensed, with restaurants and pools and all that on property because just the rigs weren't as big and the drive time was shorter? Or is that something that the European camping scene evolved to over time? And if you know what the reason was for that?
Yeah, it definitely started very simple. So simple, people coming with basic tents, basic caravans, trailers, basic camper vans. And I think the industry just evolved with the demand. So there's been a huge, particularly in Croatia, if you take an example, the last 15 years, it was very basic, very simple, but they've invested massively with their growth. So joining the EU, joining the Eurozone, huge influx of new tourists with more money. And they put that money into what people wanted from the experience. So I think over time, any holiday sort of trend has changed, hotels got better. And certainly in this region, the campgrounds followed suit. And they developed to meet that demand of we want a resort style holiday. We want to come here. We don't want to have to leave the campground. We want to be able to do anything we want by walking. So that's, relaxing at the pool, swimming in the sea, stuff for kids to do, and also going out to eat in the evening. So there's still a mix. I mean, you still have plenty of campgrounds who are very basic, and they serve that basic customer who wants to come in, cook in their camper van or their camper for as cheap as possible, move on the next day because they're touring around, versus the family who's coming there prepared to spend and invest in their holiday and just have everything that they need in one place.
Is there, outside of Croatia, is there a trend toward that too? Or is it just...
No, I think that's the whole of Europe. So I
Okay.
think I'd use the example here because there's been a dramatic change. But certainly all of the big holiday destinations, which is where the good weather is, the sea, they have that demand for holidays every year. People travel a whole day, 1.5 days. They want to sit for a week, 2 weeks, not have to worry about doing too much, and are prepared to spend for that great experience. So like Scott said, you got to know your customer. You got to know your location. And if you want to say, right, I'm a resort. I want to attract families who are going to come here, are going to spend money and have everything they need in one place. Then you go for that. You invest in it. And I think the evidence certainly from this region is that that pays off really big.
It's almost a different category of resort than we have in the States from outdoor hospitality, isn't it? Like I don't see too many of what I would equate to what Croatia has. I mean, I haven't been all over Europe to see enough of that stuff. Like we have RV resorts that are very nice, but we don't have that kind of resort here. And it's almost like a different class of customers that they've managed to pull directly from the hotel industry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's getting there, but like you can go to a resort here which has 3, 4 restaurants. It has an Italian, it has an Asian restaurant, it has a local restaurant, it has a pizza restaurant. So you can go to a different one every night, 2 times, and that's your whole week. It has, an entertainment stage. It has live music and kid stuff every day. And then it's multi-purpose restaurant as well. So at night, it's a sit down. During the day, it's like delivery. Order on your app. I want a pizza for lunch. Comes from the same kitchen, the same restaurants. It's been worked all day long. So there definitely, there are places where it's super organized. Everything is there. You don't have to think about anything. And I haven't seen that in the US. I've stayed at a couple of resorts when we gone to visit our customers. Great pool, great amenities, but it's not everything you need. You have to leave the campground to go into town to have a meal out. There isn't something on site at all.
I wonder if it takes like a bigger player, like in the States, like a Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt to get involved in something like that. Because there are places like that. There are Hyatt, I can't remember what they're named, not Regencies, I can't think of the name. There are Hyatt resorts like that that are mostly outdoors. There aren't very many, but they probably could be in a stretch considered outdoor hospitality. But they still, I don't know if they rise to the level of what we're talking about in Europe.
Yeah, but
I don't.
I'm talking about places that are family owned as well.
Yes, yeah.
So there are some that are groups, and like there's a group of 7 or 9 or 20, and they put the same layer of luxury on all of them. But there's just family, they've been there in business 20 years, they've grown, they've invested, and now they're full on resort with everything they need. So it is possible.
We need some data on this, Scott. Like
we do.
We need some data on why this hasn't been done in the United States. Is it the market? Is it the demographic? Is it the fact that we've had a lot of boomers and haven't necessarily needed to change for a long time? Is it the investment cost is too much over here? Is it the land is too much? There's too much spread out versus Europe is condensed. What is the reasoning? Because I think there's a whole untapped audience for outdoor hospitality that maybe aren't going to go out and buy Class A's from Phil's dealers, but might buy travel trailers or something else that could pull into some of these sites. Phil, there's a property in Croatia that has private pools on every RV site.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, there's possibility. And then the other thing is you often see, and Scott, you back me up from data, you often see that when people are going to outside of the outdoor hospitality industry, right? When people are going to take a vacation, they want to be confident in that vacation, which is why Disney is so successful. Because one of the reasons, because they can guarantee the Disney experience when you go to Disney. And so if you have a larger resort like that with the multiple restaurants or the app ordering or the pools or the multiple experiences, then people, I think, are more confident trying that for the first time. And then they get introduced to outdoor hospitality in a whole different way, from maybe the top to the bottom versus the tent to the RV.
So my point of view on this, and one of the reasons that you haven't seen a proliferation of this type of resort here is essentially the foundation and the culture surrounding camping. Traditionally, camping has been a relatively blue-collar type of activity. It appeals to the middle, lower income group of people. A lower income person can go camping for relatively short money. They can take a vacation. They can take a family vacation that's affordable to them, that they can budget for. And that's been our tradition. There's another factor in that in the States, camping traditionally has been a very social activity. And it is very social again, among the middle lower income folks who participate. So you have this very traditional type of camping culture in the U.S. Glamping is changing that. It is taking away some of the social parts of what people have traditionally experienced. And one of the things that people were attracted to, we are facing now a generation that's not as into the social part of it as well. But what you also see happening right now, and we'll go back to what you mentioned earlier, the K curve, the K graphic, where when a person pays a certain amount, there's a threshold in the, I think it's probably about $300 per night mark, where that person's expectations start to change, and things like privacy and being catered to a little bit more start to really show themselves. And so the type of resort that Simon is talking about, and I saw the pictures of those, and I think they're really cool, by the way. That is the appeal of that is to that upper income bracket.
Yes, a different type of camper. Yeah,
it's a very different type of camper.
And we see that like early in our, I want you to finish, but we see that early in our conversion data and booking intelligence too, where we're tracking like the dollar amount where the conversions drop, and it drops at like $99, and then it goes back up at like 130.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a middle, like just complete void of, again, I don't know, K-shaped, right? But you can see it.
Yeah. So it's that really is what's going on. And right now, I think part of the kind of renormalization of camping is still occurring after the big disruption, and you're going to continue to see it. One of the things that we see, and I do call it aspirational, is that many of the people who are having the higher end types of experiences aspire to lower end, to more rustic, to backcountry types of experiences, to have that kind of outdoor experience, because everything they've had up to this point is very sanitized, and people still want to be outdoors. I mean, as Phil knows, in the RV industry, when RVers, when they go to these campgrounds, they're not all sitting in their RVs all day. No, they're outside, they're doing stuff. The RV is their it's their shelter for the night. You go out there, people are all outside, they're engaging with each other, they're playing cards and drinking gin and tonics at whatever happy hour happens to be at the campground. And that's part of that culture. And in recent years, we've kind of gotten away from that. It feels like it's starting to creep back in a little bit, but it is one of the challenges, I feel like, for the industry as well. And that's just a really, really long way of getting back to your original point about those types of resorts. There's a place for them, and there will be people that design and develop those because of the appeal to that higher end guest. But it is a limited market, and I think it will always be a limited market in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to some of those places that we have in the U.S. The Great Outdoors in Titusville, Florida, which has a golf course, tennis, beautiful clubhouse, all that stuff. Out to Palm Springs, the old outdoors resorts areas. So they exist, but I think it's an investment of capital too, that it takes a lot of money to build something like that. Now we are seeing money come in. The Margaritaville campgrounds coming in, and I know, I forget what the layers of KOAs are, but there's some top end KOAs as well that would edge into this, right, Scott? So it's out there, but I would agree that it's a bit limited, and it's definitely going to be limited where you can get that ROI, and it's mostly going to be in warm weather, southern and western areas where you can have people in there all year.
But Simon, how are the independents getting enough money? And you were going to say something, I think, too. But how are the independent families getting money to build this if it's so capital intensive in Europe?
Just over time, bit by bit. But I think I don't think there's a direct comparison, because the places I'm talking about in general, you can cater for everybody. So they're not like a high-class resort where you come in and there's one type of person. You can stay there for $40 a night in a tiny, tent site, or you can stay $500 a night in the super luxurious mobile home, and it's all in the same place. So you do get that mix and you can cater for everybody. And I think that's the big success part, is that you're not splitting your audience very heavily. Yes, you do need the balance. You do need the people who are going to spend more and make sure the restaurant's full every night. You still get the other people coming in, just staying in the cheaper sites, but still spending a bit on site and kind of keeping you going. So that having that nice, distribution, I think is key. And I don't really see that many examples. I know I've seen some of these super luxury places in the US, but they're definitely for the people with money, and the people who don't have money, I don't think feel welcome or can even afford to stay there a night. So getting that balance, I think, is part of the success.
Nobody wants to touch that one. I mean, I don't know that you're wrong, Simon. I mean, I think in recent years you've had more exposure to many of the resorts in the U.S. than I have. Like when I started my company, we were traveling, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15 on the road almost 365 days a year, going to KOAs and resorts and stuff. And I had a much easier picture of it back then, but that was before a lot of the big developers came in. A lot of these resorts came in. So I don't know how it's differed, but I generally, from what I've seen, what I market for, and who we work for at our company, I think I generally agree with that statement that there's not necessarily low end, but there's middle to low, and then there's high, and there's no real in between. And I think some of that is, how do I pay for it if it's high end and high, right? And as you're saying, Simon, I think what you're saying is they've built piece by piece. They haven't built a brand new luxury RV resort from scratch, because that's a different economic model that you have to pay for all at once versus slowly adding that luxury over time. Is that fair, Simon?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Okay.
It's only really a big group or investors going to come in and do it from scratch. The rest have done it over 10, 15, 20 years.
So then the reverse question for that is then, Scott, or the further question to that, maybe not reverse, is why do we not see some of these smaller mom and pop resorts beginning to build toward this over time? Because there's certainly been enough decades for us to have at least had one or two case studies of people who might be able to get to the level of Europe, right? Is the market just not there then, or?
I think they're doing a risk analysis on it. I think the funding hasn't been there traditionally for it. I think if they walked into a bank, I mean, right now the development costs for just a full hookup RV site is a lot. So to put in these types of sites, it's real money, and I do think that the banks right now are a little hesitant. They really, especially if you're introducing a model that isn't truly proven yet. If you're going to put in RV sites, full hookups, the cost is higher, but the banks can relate to that. There's years and years and years of case history there to show
and data,
what demand and usage will be. But if you're going to come in and ask for this very premium dollar, the financing is probably not going to come as quickly and easily. They could layer it in, but it's a long-term commitment, and a lot of campground owners I don't know if they're ready to make that leap yet. Again, it's going to take some of the much larger organizations to pump money into it and start that way. I feel like right now they're testing the waters by putting in some of these other types of parks and investing in some glamping locations here and there, just to see where the market is going before they're going to jump into that level of development. I think you'll probably see them start to pop up in the next couple of years. Once, I think we got to get past some of these roadblocks we're in right now. But I think it'll start to happen. But I do believe it will be relatively limited.
Well,
right.
Wouldn't you think that some of these campgrounds, they're landlocked for one reason, for some respect, they don't have room to expand.
Well, that's true, but you could argue Europe is much, much smaller for land than the U.S. is too, right? So there's continue your point, but
they're not, and they're also adjacent to destinations where people want to be. So the ROI on trying to make yourself a all-inclusive RV campground resort, but people are going to go to Dollywood in Tennessee, right next door or 5 miles away. You can't make that ROI. You can't. It doesn't.
Agree.
It doesn't
That makes sense. Yep.
Now, but at the same time, we are seeing the money come in with these Margaritaville developments and some of these other ones that we're reading about almost every day, where people are trying to build a destination campground, which, but they're more the larger, development groups, not necessarily the mom and pops.
All right, Scott, do you have a question for Phil or Simon? Wrap up the show.
I was originally going to go with Simon, but I'm going to see Simon in Florida in a few weeks. So I can bend his ear and we can finally meet in person. But Phil, and I'll put you on the spot a little bit. What adjustments do you think that the RV manufacturers need to make in order to start grabbing people's attention a little bit more, and start making some more inroads into some of these hard to reach groups?
Well, I think I talked a little bit about it before, the diversity of the campground, or the camper, not the campground, but the diversity of the camper, right? Mm-hmm. We're seeing it with some of these, I wouldn't call them more rustic units, but units that could be used both at a traditional campground and then in a more rustic situation. So more of these rugged type units that appeal to a certain sector of folks. The other thing is just hitting certain price points, which I think they're trying to do. We're seeing travel trailers, especially, that have been kind of boiled down to the must-haves, right? Some of the things that they were putting in not only added to the cost, but would break and weren't necessarily core parts of what you needed to camp. So I think simplifying the unit, and then reaching out to people who might not necessarily consider themselves RVers. I think those are the two areas where they could have immediate impact.
Phil, if Scott and I decide to start an RV company and design a trailer called Moto, which we invented on Outwired last week, can you get us a couple meetings with people?
Well, I definitely could. We have a convention in November. It's a great place to meet RV dealers from all over the country and Canada too. So, yeah, right. No, I mean, our convention is kind of a we always see some new upstart. Last year it was an electric RV that made its debut there. So we always see a few of the outliers there that when they have the big show in September in Elkhart, they kind of get shuttled off to the side. So there's a lot of innovation going on for sure.
I only want to come though if I can have an endorsed by Phil sticker on the unit with your face. That's it.
That would be a conflict of interest, I think. You don't want me behind bars, do you? That's
no, but I want your selling power, like everybody would trust Phil's recommendation. All right, Phil, do you have a question for Scott or Simon?
Well, Simon, I would just ask you if what's your overall feeling, up, down, flat for the year in Europe for camping?
Yeah, I think we're kind of in a doldrums at the moment where there's no real winds blowing either direction. So I can't say at the moment, but I think it generally tends to be good in the end. And certainly at the beginning of the year, January, the numbers were okay. So I'm positively optimistic.
All right, Simon, last but not least, you have a question for Phil or Scott?
No, I think I asked Phyllis before about the World Cup side of things, whether the dealers have really pushed on that again, or there's been any sort of action towards benefiting that, or is that kind of not in the thoughts too much?
Definitely there's been some movement on the rental side, the RV rental side, not only for World Cup, but it's also the 250th anniversary of the United States. So there's been some limited marketing around some of those special events. It's also the 150th anniversary of Route 66. Maybe it's the 100 years. So it's a
I think
very
it's 100,
big
yeah.
road.
It's
Yeah, it's
something
100.
big.
Yeah. So, there's these special events that we're trying to tie some things to, and we'll see a little bit of increase from that, I would think, but certainly it's on people's mind. And I know some of the campgrounds are doing some special stuff if they're close to those World Cup sites.
All right. Well, any final thoughts, Simon? And then where can they learn more about Camp Map?
No, yeah, you can find us on campmap.com or on LinkedIn. You can find me and reach out and get anything you need.
And Phil, where can they learn more about RVDA?
RVDA.org has got all of our information as far as a dealer locator, as well as information about our upcoming convention in November, which we're just starting to put together. And if people are interested in speaking or exhibiting, there's information there.
Scott and I would like to do the keynote on Moto. Keep that in mind. Scott, final thoughts? Where can they find out more about Karen?
KarenConsulting.com. We have a resource library of a lot of reports. Some of those are, I've done with Brian. You can also go to Brian's website to find some of that information as well. And yeah, looking forward to doing more. We're going to be in Florida for their convention coming up. Also going to be in DC, Phil, for RVs Move America Week coming up. So yeah, a couple things going on. There's a couple others I might be at, but I haven't confirmed yet. So, but yeah, reach out if anybody has questions, please.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. If you're not tired of hearing from me and Scott, we will be on Outwired in about 55 minutes, something like that. We're going to just irritate some more people if we can, because that's what we do really best, or at least I do. And then Scott just joins in. We're going to talk about the outdoor industry and what qualifies as a participant, what doesn't, what those numbers look like. And then we're also going to talk about Chinese RVs. Sorry, Phil. And just see what that market looks like. And just out of curiosity, see what is China doing and what does the market look like, and what are they, maybe there's some takeaways that we can bring home to the
Big
US.
market in Australia for Chinese RVs.
Is there? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week in another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Take care, guys. I appreciate y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.